Are your builds lacking the small details that add those finishing touches they need? If so, they hopefully won't after you've watched this video. Before we get into specific details, we should probably talk about some general rules for detailing. First of all, details can be as simple as just adding clutter. I recommend when it comes to this finding a balance that works for you between chaotic mess and blank space. Personally, I like my builds to be quite chaotic. However, for many builds, fewer details can draw attention to the details you choose to add. Another thing to bear in mind is that whilst details can make logical sense, they don't need to. For example, there may not be much of a reason for your blacksmith to have loads of barrels around. However, if it feels like a medieval build and it makes sense for it to be there, it may as well be used. For this particular video, I'm going to be focusing on a rustic house. However, a lot of the specific details I'm recommending can work on a variety of different build styles. If your build is based in a more rural area, it's almost essential to have a lot of foliage around. However, foliage can also be used as a great detail for more urban settings as well. Here, plants can add a sense of buildings being run down by making structures overgrown. However, it can also be used to create highlight due to the more vibrant colours of the foliage, for example in a window box or planter. Well placed in a rural setting, foliage can be used to quickly embed the build into the landscape. Recently, the options around foliage have increased drastically, with moss and a load of new plant variants being added to the game. Many of these new plants have been really great for detailing, as they feel a little bit less vibrant and overpowering than the old flowers. Adding things like barrels are great for detailing. Not only do they add a huge amount of utility to the build, but they're cheap enough to be accessible in early game survival. Piles of barrels and chests are the sort of decorations that can be scattered everywhere around builds no matter of the style, and they help tell a story, implying resources are being transported or stored in certain locations. The sorts of blocks that are great for these kind of detailing are barrels, pots, beehives, chests, and other villager workstations. I'd also recommend adding height variation to some of these builds with wooden slabs and trapdoors, making the whole thing feel a bit more varied and detailed. If you want some simple crates, they're very easy to make. All you need to do is place a block of your choice and then surround it with trapdoors, creating some nice storage that you can look into for extra detail. Probably the quickest detailing tip on this list is using glow lichen. Using glow lichen on walls that feel bare or that you want to appear as if they are damaged not only provides a bit of light for mob proofing but also gives builders access to another texture. I find glow lichen working particularly well on stone walls as the texture appears very subtle. A tip that could be seen as a bit unexpected for this list is using paths. Whilst building paths can be a time-consuming process, they can be used to create connections between builds and make a sense of identity for the area around them. The choice of block palette and style of paths can also significantly affect how the building's story and culture are shown. For example, in the rural area or a poorer part of a town, paths may be made of coarse dirt and spruce, signifying that the funding from the town is not being spent in that area. Whilst in the city centre or a merchant's district, roads may be constructed of stone, creating a sense that this area receives more funding due to class or the fact that the area is more heavily used. Another reason that paths are a great detail to add, as they allow you to control how people approach your build, and through this control the sightlines that you can create. This means that you can focus where you put other details due to where they'll be looking, not having to focus on covering absolutely every part of the build with details. Whilst this video is very much focused on the horizontal space in your build, we can't ignore your vertical space. To decorate walls in your build, I recommend using a lot of hanging items. This could come in the form of the new hanging signs, which add a nice sense of chaotic clutter. Another of my favourite details is to connect fences and chains between nearby buildings and hang banners on them. This can then represent clothes being dried. Similar details that could be added to a build are things like cranes in an industrial area, and lanterns hanging from windows. Having items hanging from walls or ledges in a building allows more detail to be included on the higher up areas. Other details to add to the sides of buildings could come in the form of balconies or shelters over windows and doors, and it adds extra layers, making sure the building doesn't just have a flat wall. Thanks for watching the video. If you found it at all helpful and you want to learn about the 5 mistakes you're probably making as a beginner builder, click on the end screen now.